Michael the movie. I'm going to freestyle this review because I just watched it yesterday and I'm ready for you to hear my thoughts. Jafar. Let's start off with Jafar Jackson. Jafar, you ate that. Jafar, I can tell you worked hard for this role. You've done your father, your family, and your uncle Michael so proud. I think Jafar did an amazing job, an incredible job. He really embodied Michael Jackson the best he possibly could, and he was so convincing on screen. I think it helped that obviously Jafar being obviously a direct family member of the Jacksons, he already has the look. So I think it just works having Jafar in the role. And like what Marlon Jackson said once in the movie, obviously his other uncle, and one of the Jackson brothers, he said that no one else could have probably played this role other than Jafar. And actually, I completely agree with that. I'm glad they got a member of the family to play Michael Jackson, because I think in the past, there haven't been kind of favorable depictions of Michael in various media. So I think getting a family member who's obviously going to respect his uncle to the highest degree was the perfect choice. The boy who played young Michael, Giuliano Valdi, I think is his name, he was amazing. He did fantastically. He was perfect. Like, he was just as the youngest brother of the Jackson 5. He sang so well, he acted well, the facial expressions, and I think Giuliano did a fantastic job. Fantastic. Coleman Domingo, of course, a natural talent. I knew he was going to completely kill this role as Joe Jackson, Michael Jackson's father. Because there are times where you just, like, when he would come on screen, you're like, oh no, oh gosh. Like, you'd have the same feeling that Michael had in the movie, where it's just like, oh, like, he's just this kind of scary, unwelcoming presence. And Coleman, as I knew he would, just really was fantastic in that role. Nia Long as Katherine Jackson, just this really beautiful, nurturing character. I think was really beautiful how she played that role as well. And I think what I would like to know actually is, I know that Michael really loved his mother. I would like to see if the relationship between them was as close as what it was depicted in the film. There are times where, like, they would be watching certain shows together, and I think I do remember Michael once saying that, like, when he was younger, he would be obviously watching certain shows and certain movies with his mother. His mother would call him into the room and say, oh, James Brown is on TV, and because Michael was very influenced by James Brown. So I think there is that aspect there. And of course, I think the family obviously did have a say in this movie. So I think that was obviously as accurate as it can be. But it was just really lovely to see the relationship between them. I want to go on to the number of people that I feel like we didn't see and we should have seen, or we should have seen more of. Number one, Janet Jackson. Now, I'm already aware that Janet Jackson was asked to be in the movie, or if she wanted to be, and she declined the offer. So that explains why obviously she's not in the movie. But it did feel a little bit strange that, like, we know there are more Jacksons, and Janet being probably the second most famous, or one of the most famous in the family, and she wasn't shown. I would have loved to have seen her, but I am quite confident that she's going to have her own movie, her own biopic. I don't know if that'll be in the near future, but it will certainly be in the future. And I will be very excited for that. I love Janet. I'm a big fan of her as much as I'm a big fan of Michael Jackson. But I did find it a bit strange just not seeing Janet on screen. They also have another sister, Rebbie Jackson. She's actually the oldest Jackson, and I would have loved to have seen a bit more of her. Like, she wasn't depicted in this film at all, and I kind of just want to know where she was in all this. Of course, being a part of the family, I'm sure she was there at all the shows with her mother and her other sisters, and while the Jackson 5 were performing and touring, and I'm sure being at home with her mother as well. But it would have been good to kind of see that depicted on screen as well. So I'm surprised that we didn't see much of Rebbie. I don't know, maybe she got asked and she declined too, but I expected to see a bit more of her. Another Jackson, of course, that we didn't see, Randy. Randy is actually the youngest brother of the Jacksons, but Janet is still the youngest sibling out of all of them. But yeah, Janet and Randy were not in this movie, and I'm surprised that Randy wasn't shown. Maybe he declined as well. But I think it's fair to say they probably all got asked if they want to be depicted in the movie, and those who didn't get shown, probably the ones that declined. But yeah, I'm surprised that not even Randy was even shown as well. Diana Ross. Now, I heard they already filmed a number of scenes with Diana Ross. Well, the woman who's obviously going to play Diana Ross, I believe her name is Kat Graham. She was supposed to very much feature in this film, but she came out saying that unfortunately her scenes were cut. Obviously, because Diana Ross must have got in touch and said, "Don't put me in this film," which is such a shame, really, because Diana Ross is really a big part of Michael Jackson's career. You know, he was very much apparently, you know, infatuated by her, and they performed together. They're very close friends. And it's a shame that we couldn't see that side of the story being told. So I'd really like to know what the tea is behind that and why she was so adamant to not be involved in this film. It just didn't feel right that like she wasn't a part of it. And another person as well, I think Cher. Now I know she wasn't a big part of their career, but there was a part, I think, of the Jackson 5 performance, their career, where they performed with her, and I think I just would have loved to seen that performance reenacted. So I think that's just more of a personal thing for me, but I don't think it mattered too much, obviously, that Cher wasn't part of this film, but I would have just loved to seen that performance depicted. But yeah, with Diana Ross, I'm very kind of disappointed that she didn't want to be featured in this film. So never mind. Quincy Jones. Now, Quincy Jones was in this film. He was certainly was there, and it would have been very strange if he wasn't. Kendrick Sampson played Quincy Jones, and Kendrick Sampson is an actor who we know from Insecure and How to Get Away with Murder, and obviously a number of other things as well. And I was quite surprised actually to see him in this film. I didn't recognize him at first until afterwards, and I wanted to see the full cast and who played what. And I saw that Kendrick Sampson was playing Quincy Jones. I was like, oh yeah, of course. I saw his face in the film, and I was like, I recognize that face. Yeah, it was good to see him on screen. But I bring up Quincy Jones because I'm very surprised that he didn't have more of a role in this film. He was integral in Michael Jackson's early solo career when it came to Off the Wall and Thriller and Bad. And so not seeing a bit more of Quincy was a bit of a surprise to me. But I know that this movie obviously called Michael, it was focused on Michael solely. So, you know, we're going to see more of Michael than anybody else. But I'm just surprised that Quincy Jones wasn't a large part of the film as well. And last person I was kind of surprised not to see, but probably an understated one, was Brooke Shields. I know there was a time where I think Michael and Brooke were very, very close. I think they were very close friends, and they would go to certain award shows together. I think they were actually dating and together anyway. And we didn't see much of that. Not that I expected to have a large role in the movie, but just someone else that was part of the story that I think would have been good to kind of show on screen. But I think that leads me on to say that what I think part of a criticism of the film would be that I wish there were some parts of the story that were fleshed out more. I know there's only so much you can put in a movie, but I do feel there were some people and some stories that very much were part of Michael Jackson's larger story, and that at that point of his life, that I wish that was fleshed out more, and that we just kind of saw more of a backstory to what went on at that time. But I know there were a number of things they had to cut out of this film. So I hear that like the whole original third act of the film had to be reshot because they were going to address the allegations that Michael faced at that time. I think in the early 90s, it was like 1993, against with Jordan Chandler. He was the boy, well, that had his parents really accuse Michael Jackson, to be honest. And they were going to tell the story of what happened at that time. But then apparently they found out there was a clause in the lawsuit or the case that said that this whole case with Jordan Chandler could not be depicted on screen or in any media. So they really had to cut that all out and end the film a certain different way. So I think between that happening and then Diana Ross not wanting to be depicted in the film at all, and probably one or two other people that didn't want to be in it, such as Janet Jackson, I think they had to do the best with what they got, the best with what they had, and that's what produced the film that we had now. And I think, in spite of that, I think it was a really great film. I actually think that Antoine Fuqua, he did a fantastic job in depicting Michael in such a beautiful, favorable light. And this is the kind of spotlight I think Michael Jackson deserves to have, really, because there's been so much about him in the media, and I'm sure that will be addressed in part 2, because there better be a part 2, because there's so much more to tell. And Michael, there's so many layers to him. He's just an extraordinary guy. Michael Jackson is such an extraordinary man. There's like only so much you can put in a 2 to 3 hour movie, that you can't possibly fit everything. So I think with what they were allowed to film and what they were allowed to portray, I think it was really well done. I really enjoyed it. I don't know if there's bias there, because I'm a Michael Jackson fan anyway. So I just enjoyed just how the story was told. I just think it was really, there were just some things I didn't really realize either. So for example, when it came to him buying his chimpanzee Bubbles, and him getting his giraffe and some of his animals, I didn't realize he was still living with his family, his parents at the time. I thought by that point that he actually already moved out and he had Neverland, or he had, I think actually Neverland he got in the early 90s or maybe late 80s. But I didn't realize that he was still living with his family while he was having all these animals. I just thought, oh, that's just so funny. Like, imagine your son comes home and says, oh, here's my pet chimp, by the way, and here's a giraffe that's just like floating around the compound. So yeah, it was, I thought that was quite interesting as well. But I think overall, I think they did a good job with this. I enjoyed it. Overall, I really did enjoy the film, but it certainly needs a part 2. It certainly needs a part 2. And as it was rightly said at the end of the film, to be continued. I think, the story continues, because the story is not over. And actually, in what they fit in the film, there was so much they could have actually fit in, but they did the best with what they could. I think that's the only criticism I would have for the film, personally. Just, I wish there were just some parts of the story or some characters that were fleshed out a bit more, because there was so much happening at that time in Michael's life. But that's my overall review of Michael, the movie. I absolutely loved every performance. Jafar, you can tell he trained so hard for this role, and he did his family proud. He really was the best person to depict Michael Jackson on screen, and I think Michael Jackson himself would be so proud of him. Every dance move, he ate that. he was incredible. I think Jafar did an incredible job. I love seeing Thriller as well. It was just very nostalgic, and the last performance, Bad, oh my goodness, I was enjoying it so much that when the film, spoiler obviously, that when the film ended at that point, I was like, no, I want to see more. Like, I want to see more. Like, I want him to perform more. It was brilliant. It's actually a film that I think I could see again. I could definitely watch it again. I don't know if it's just because I'm biased as already a Michael Jackson fan, but I do think Antoine did exceptionally well in telling the story, and I look forward to hearing what more there is to tell on Michael Jackson's story. I do know quite a bit about his life, and I just think, it's going to be done in such a respectful way, and I think that's what he deserves after everything he went through. So if you've seen the Michael movie, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you feel like there were some things in the movie that they missed, that they should have included? Do you think it was just 10 out of 10 and fantastically done? Do you agree with any of my points that I brought up, and people that they didn't really include that really should have been included? I want to hear what you think. Let me know, and I'll see you in the comments.